Good morning and happy Friday, everybody. It's snowy. It's going to finally get cold here in Northern Illinois. In case you haven't heard, if you've been not in touch with entertainment news at all, Ellen DeGeneres' DJ and a longtime celebrity, Twitch, committed suicide the other day. And, this is one of those situations where apparently nobody knew that this person was having challenges, and he's married, he's got kids, he's super excited about his life, and then all of a sudden he goes to a hotel room and puts a gun in his mouth. So the question is, how does that happen? How do we get to a point where we look at it and say, this is the outcome that needs to happen? Now remember that humans, when they do things, they always do things to avoid pain and to gain pleasure. And we'll do a lot more to avoid pain than we will to gain pleasure. So when somebody completes a suicide, that to them is less painful than staying alive for whatever reason that they have going on in their life. And when somebody who looks like they have everything in life does that, it can be very confusing. I mean, I remember when Anthony Bourdain completed a suicide. One of my good friends followed him and was really, really upset when that happened, and spent a lot of time talking to me about how can that happen? This person had this great career and had all this going on. So what happens is we all have this model of the world. We all have a blueprint for how we think our life should be and the world should be. And many times what the reality is different from our blueprint. As a matter of fact, let's face it, most of the time the reality is different from our blueprint. What happens when somebody becomes suicidal is they feel like they can't do anything about it. They feel like they can't adjust to get to that blueprint ever. And then there's this mass feeling of hopelessness, and so then suicide becomes the option because that's less painful than continuing to live a life where you're so far from your blueprint. Now, I certainly don't know what happened with Twitch in terms of his particular blueprint, but for everybody that attempts suicide or complete suicide, that's what happens. Here's the reality. The reality is we can always change our blueprint. That is absolutely possible, and if you know the tools and technology to actually do that, it's quite frankly pretty easy. So when you get into that situation where, who has not contemplated suicide? The answer is virtually nobody has not contemplated suicide at one time or another in their life. It's almost always, somebody almost always experiences that at least once in their lifetime. So if you've experienced that feeling of this would be a viable option, don't think that you're alone, because you're not, because the vast, vast majority of humans have experienced that. But if you get to that place where you have that type of a level of hopelessness where you think that's a viable option, the reality is you can always change that blueprint that you have. Your blueprint is simply what you think should happen. And you can adjust your response to that blueprint. So you can always think, you can always use the triad like we talked about and change that focus. Now, there's techniques to do that I'm not going to do while I'm here talking to you this morning. But I want to accomplish two things by this morning. Number one, understand how people get there. It isn't about success. It isn't about what you've got going on in your life, because you can have everything be perfect and still be unhappy. And that's based on what you focus on and based on your blueprint. So when you see somebody that's significantly successful and they still attempt or complete a suicide, remember, one of our responses is a lot of times, well, then if that person can't be happy, then how am I supposed to be happy? Remember, success doesn't necessarily breed happiness. You have to decide to be happy. You have to allow yourself to be happy. We decide how we feel. So number one, don't let that confuse you, because all that simply means is that blueprint that they have, they couldn't match it, and they felt like there was no way they could get there. Secondly, understand that that's the process, is the blueprint doesn't match your reality and you feel like you can never get to the blueprint. That's how people end up suicidal. When that happens, you can always just adjust the blueprint, and that's pretty easy to do if you are with the right people who know how to do it. So we've all been there. Everybody's had a time where they thought, maybe that's a viable option. It doesn't really have a lot to do with what's going on in your life. I mean, a lot of times it comes when there's a financial crisis, but that type of feeling is completely unpredictable based upon what your particular blueprint is. A lot of times success can make you even more unhappy. Remember, money magnifies. Whatever you are, you're going to be more of if you have more money. If you're happy, you're going to be more happy. If you're generous, you're going to be more generous. If you're a jerk, you're going to be a bigger jerk. Well, if you're unhappy, you're going to be even more unhappy, because then you're going to have a pile of money and you're going to go, oh my God, I have all of this and I'm still not happy. I mean, I'm sure that's what happened with Anthony Bourdain. I think clearly he felt unworthy of the success because of his history of drug use and all of these things, that he never really felt like he should have this situation, and it was way beyond his blueprint. What happened with Twitch? I don't know. A tragedy for his family. But remember, it can happen to all of us. It doesn't really matter what's going on in your life. It matters what your blueprint is, and it's always fixable. And if you're with the right NLP trainer or coach, it's actually fixable pretty easily. It's fixable. You just got to learn that you can always change your blueprint, and you can always change your response to your blueprint. So, sad day for that family, sad day for the loss in the entertainment industry. And anytime somebody, ends their life early, it's a horrible tragedy, because life is so precious and such a great gift, especially when you have a family that now you've left behind and you've done the ultimate disservice to, because they'll constantly now be asking, what did I do wrong that this ended up happening? So always remember it's changeable. Always remember it can completely be dealt with. And always remember it's very common to end up in that particular situation feeling that way. So if you do, talk to somebody, ask for help, raise your hand. We're all in this together. Let's take care of each other. Thanks for watching today, everybody.